It's my great honor to introduce tonight's speaker. I happen to know Michael and his family very well. He used to go by Naji, but I'm going to call him Michael tonight. He played a major role in my personal faith journey, and Rena's too, and many other people that I know. He had a Bible study at St Ephrem Maronite Church in El Cajon for many, many years. I think almost 20 years I was reading. And it was exactly what Rena and I needed when we were engaged, and it really did transform our faith journey. But despite having attended Catholic schools my whole life, I really started living and understanding my faith for the first time during his Bible study. I've told Naji many times how indebted we feel for all that he's done for us. So Michael and his wife Anouk were also our original inspiration for homeschooling. They've become mentors and friends, and many of their daughters have helped our family over the years. So his bio: Michael was born and raised in Lebanon, and he left to France at age 17, where he lived for 5 years. His family immigrated to Canada, where Michael studied computer science and earned a PhD in computational geometry and graph theory. It was during this period that he rediscovered the Catholic faith through the writings of St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross. Michael lives in San Diego with his wife and 7 children. He recently joined First American as principal enterprise architect in charge of application architecture. He's fluent in 3 languages. From 1997 through 2016, he led a Bible study at St Ephrem, which turned into a weekly Bible study in 2000. He also taught a 1-year study at St. Margaret's Church, and he's appeared on EWTN as a guest of Father Mitch Pacwa. I sent you guys the link to that interview. He covered in his Bible study Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and the Gospels of St. Matthew, St. Luke, and Revelation. He spent 2 years on the book of Revelation. His Bible studies are freely available on his website, corbono.com, and on various podcasts such as Spotify. And the studies have reached listeners in over 25 countries. He has a truly unique gift in communicating and sharing the faith. I think he's one of the best communicators of the faith that I've ever met personally. I have not heard him speak on the subject of artificial intelligence, but I am very much looking forward to his talk tonight. He is uniquely qualified to address this issue in light of his educational background and his experience, and so please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. So there are some of you who know me for some time, and you can please keep continuing to call me Naji. And for those who just met me, you can call me Michael or Bob. I'll answer to all of those. I titled this talk, Artificial Intelligence in the Salvific Plan of God. And I did it on purpose because typically these two things don't come together. And what I would like to do is spend 40 minutes, walk you through if you will, we're going to build together a dartboard. I want to give you a roadmap to help you understand how these pieces fit together. Now, in my job at First American, I'm actually in charge of the deployment of artificial intelligence. Not in charge, but as an architect, I play a role in the deployment of artificial intelligence. So I am not going to address that from a corporate side. That'll be a very different talk. I'm really looking at it from the perspective of the faith. And that's what I'm going to do tonight. So I'm going to start by actually spending 10 minutes talking to you about AI. And I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. I would like it to be interactive. So if I'm losing you, raise your hand. If you have questions, raise your hand. All right. Before I begin, I'd like to start by asking you a question. Show of hands. How many of you have heard of ChatGPT? Raise your hand, please. Very good. How many of you have used ChatGPT? Excellent. How many of you use it daily? All right, very good. Excellent. So the first 10 minutes of this talk is going to be focused on artificial intelligence, and particularly in ChatGPT. what is artificial intelligence? Obviously, to be able to answer this question, we need to understand what intelligence is. And it's one of those concepts that are really difficult to define. And the reason why it is difficult to define is because this modern world starts from a false premise when thinking of intelligence. They start with the notion that intelligence is within us. As a result, they'll say nonsensical things like, oh, this dog is intelligent. Why is it nonsensical? Because the classical understanding of intelligence in the Catholic Church is that intelligence starts outside of us. The idea is that the world, the universe in which we live, is intelligible. Now that might seem like a trite truth, but it's actually extraordinary that the universe in which we live has patterns and laws that it follows. And what is even more extraordinary is that we are able to understand them. And so, for instance, the way St. Thomas would define intelligence is the alignment of reason to data. I'm modernizing the definition. Facts are out there. Our job is to align to them. That is a sign of intelligence. Contrary-wise, a sign of foolishness is to start with an inner conviction and force it on the data. For instance, you know that bulimia is a medical condition where a person who is clearly malnourished think of herself, it's mostly girls, as being possibly obese. She's afraid of being fat. That's a case where the inner conviction takes precedence over the fact. So then intelligence is the alignment of reason to fact. Then what is artificial intelligence under this condition? It is the alignment of a program to data. It's the ability of a program that has been written to adapt to data that is given to it from the outside. This is why ChatGPT is striking such a chord with so many of us. Intelligence is obviously a faculty of reason. I like, when I talk about artificial intelligence, to sort of divide it this way. Intelligence is a faculty of reason, and we're talking about software, programs that we write. Robotics is a faculty of the will. Robots do things. And therefore, when you take an intelligent robot, which we call a humanoid, you have full-on artificial intelligence. All right. Now, there are a bunch of scientists who went to God and said, Lord, we got some news for you. We can create life. And the Lord said, okay, show me. And they said, here we go. Step number one. We take some dirt. And God said, hold it. That's my dirt. Go get your own. Now, that joke, to me, is really profound because it illustrates this idea that you've got to start with that which is outside of you, the universe, right? Okay. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this ChatGPT. I was really thinking about how we're going to go about doing it. How do I explain that in terms that would appeal to you, but without drowning you with technicalities? And every time I tried to do this, I ended up with in a situation where you'd have more questions than answers. So instead, what I'm going to do with all of you is make you feel what it would be like to be ChatGPT. So we're going to play a very simple game. And I would like you to participate with me. And oh, by the way, those of you who understand Lebanese or Arabic, do not answer. Here we go. The game is really simple. Now observe what I'm going to do. I'm not going to give you any rules. Nothing. I'm just going to start right away. This is data. Monday, Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday. Lundi, mardi. Lundi, mardi. Lundi, mardi. Ahad, tanin. Ahad, tanin. Ahad, tanin. I'm going to do it one more time. Monday, Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday. Lundi, mardi. Lundi, mardi. Lundi, mardi. Ahad, tanin. Ahad, tanin. Ahad, tanin. Now you're ChatGPT, and I'm going to ask you a question. What is Monday in Lebanese? Ahad, right? How did you come with that answer? I didn't tell you anything. I did not instruct you. I did not give you rules. I did not explain anything to you. I just repeated 6 words in 3 languages. What did you do? You related, spatially related, Monday and Tuesday as Mondays before Tuesday. And then you heard these other strings. If you don't understand French, let's say, you heard lundi and mardi. What did you do? You organized them the same way. And you inferred that Monday, lundi, ahad basically point to the same thing. That is called pre-training. So ChatGPT is an engine with a few rules, and you give it data. And it pre-trains on the data. By the way, that's the P in ChatGPT, pre-trained. And then what did you do? You generated an answer. When you generated that answer, you said ahad. Do you know what ahad means? No, you just said a word. Linguistically, you produced a word. That's what ChatGPT does. ChatGPT is a language model. That's what it is. It manipulates languages. That's all it does. Based on rules that are inferred from the data. That's, by the way, you generated the answer. That's the G in ChatGPT, generative pre-trained. To generate your answer, what did you do? You had to do some transformation. You took Monday and Tuesday and you created essentially a spatial relationship between them. Mondays before Tuesday. And then you applied that same spatial relationship to lundi, mardi, and ahad and tanin. And then you applied a transform from one to the other. You mapped them. That's the T in ChatGPT. Because it's really a transformer network. That's what ChatGPT does. Which is why ChatGPT can give you wrong answers. Because Monday in Lebanese is not ahad. And ChatGPT will spit out happily whatever answer it can spit out based on whatever data you gave it. That's in a nutshell how this thing works. Now, let me ask you this question. Does that strike you as intelligent? No. Which is why intelligence is really difficult to define when you look internally. If I showed you, but not, maybe not me, but a neurologist were to show you how the brain processes information, there would be nothing in it that strikes you as intelligent. It's a bunch of neurons that fire chemicals and proteins are connected together, and you look at the whole thing and you go, where's the intelligence? See that? But its ability, its uncanny ability to produce answers that seem to be right is the power behind this engine. Now, let me read something to you which is kind of interesting. There's this new reporter in England. His name is Harry Guinness. And Harry Guinness went to ChatGPT and asked, who is Harry Guinness? And here's the answer ChatGPT gave him. Harry Guinness is a freelance writer and journalist based in Ireland. He has written for a variety of publications, including the New York Times, The Guardian, The Huffington Post, and Popular Mechanics. He covers topics ranging from technology and photography to travel and culture. Okay? So ChatGPT generated that answer, gave it back. What's really interesting is that Harry Guinness did publish for the New York Times, but he never published for The Guardian or The Huffington Post. So why did ChatGPT add those? Because ChatGPT is a language model. And what it does is that it puts things together close to each other based on probability. So when you survey the web, you will find that whenever someone is talking about the New York Times, they talk about the Huffington Post, the Guardian, and the Huffington Post. So ChatGPT threw those out. This engine has no clue who Harry Guinness is. The engine is producing a response based on probability weights. So we know, as computer scientists, that transform networks suffer from two things: hypnosis, and then something we call spread, or let's call it spread for now. Hypnosis is the ability, if I hypnotize someone, I can make that person say whatever I want. Well, there are techniques that you can use to get ChatGPT to say whatever you want. It's possible. We call it hypnosis. And the other one is called, I'm calling it spread, is because there is a team at MIT that's been tracking ChatGPT's ability to determine whether a number is a prime number or not. Prime numbers are numbers divisible by themselves and 1. So 5, 7, but not 9. There is a definite algorithm, mechanism, technique to say whether a number is prime or not. But ChatGPT is not doing this. It's a language model. So they've been going to ChatGPT and saying, hey, is this number prime? Knowing that it isn't. And what they've noticed over a period of time is the number of false answers that ChatGPT is giving is going up. That is a well-known problem for transform networks. What do you have to retain from everything I've said? It makes mistakes. Now, some of you might be happy that it makes mistakes because then, well, it can be like us, right? Because we never make mistakes. Thank you, sir. Talk to my wife. He told me I don't. Yeah. The point is, no, it mimics human behavior precisely because it makes mistakes. All right. So, do you have now a sort of a kind of a understanding of what this ChatGPT thing? Okay. There is no reason for you to be afraid of. I encourage all of you to go to OpenAI, get an account ChatGPT and use it. You have to use it, number one, to get over your fear. There is it's a constant of human condition to be afraid of technology. When in the Industrial Revolution, the first train, the loco, right, ran in London, there was a riot. People rioted against it because they considered it to be the chariot of the devil. How could a chariot run without horses? I mean, we're laughing about this, but guess what? We do the same thing. There are people who are afraid of cell phones because they're going to get brain cancer from microwaves because I don't know what they're going to do. Aspartame, and I can keep on and on and on. It's natural for human beings to be afraid of technology. But the reason why I'm suggesting you use it is because if you don't, you're going to start to lose touch with your kids. They're going to grow with it. There's no way around it. Okay? So just use it and be familiar with it. In fact, I went to this thing and I asked it to give me a synopsis of this talk. I'm not going to read it to you, but it did a good job. But it's not the talk I'm giving. All right. So now let's switch over and talk about something else that is very important for us to understand, and that's heresies. What is the purpose of heresies in the plan of God? If you actually read the creed, when you actually say the creed, it'd be a good exercise, if you've never done it, to read the creed and then start to point out at all the heresies that the creed is rejecting. Because it is. So the purpose of heresies is to purify the church, refine the church understanding of the faith, and define the faith a little bit better. That's what heresies do to help us better understand our faith. And I'm going to run you through some heresies, and then we'll focus on some that are really important for us today. So one heresy that attacked the Trinity is Arianism. Arianism is a heresy that stated that Jesus is not co-eternal with the Father. It denied the Trinity. Anyone knows how long did the heresy of Arianism last? 3? 100? Hanan, you can't answer. Okay, go ahead. Fine. 800. 800 years. St. Jerome is reported to have groaned and said 80% of all Catholic bishops are Arian. I think it was Saint John Newman who said, ignorance of history is ignorance of the church. So it's good to keep tab of what happened in the history of the church. Incarnation, monophysitism, and monolithism, two heresies that attacked, one, the nature of Christ, stating Christ is only divine, and his will, stating it has only one will. Original sin, now that's really an important one, Pelagianism. It's one of the old heresies, started in the year 350, 340, I think, when a monk from England named Pelagius went to Rome and was so shocked by the state of the clergy that he declared, we don't need baptism to be saved. What we really need is the will to be saved. Just have to do it. I'm simplifying, but that's Pelagianism, and it's very much alive today. Grace, the attack on grace. Grace is perhaps one of the most important Catholic concepts, grace, and one of the least understood. And one of the greatest heresy to attack grace is the Protestant heresy. And I'm sorry, I'm a 2x4 guy, I call it by its name. It's a heresy. I'm going to delve a little bit more into this business in a little while. I'll come back to it. I'll explain to you why this is so important. The supernatural life has been attacked by rationalism. Rationalism is this idea that natural reason is the only source of religious truth. I repeat, natural reason is the only source of religious truth. Man alone, without revelation, can comprehend whatever he needs to reach eternal salvation. Shade of Pelagianism. That's called rationalism. Very much alive today. And then finally, the one that is going to be very germane to this talk is the attack on the soul. Materialism. Materialism is a denial of the soul. Okay? And obviously, building robots endowed with reason and will, which is going to happen, or at least will have the pretense of happening, is very much going to be used as an attack on the soul. And we'll get to that. So what I tried to do here is explain that what if some of you or if you know folks who are afraid or who are looking at this technology in a negative light, well, they have reasons to do so because they have a sense of what's coming, right? It's not that the technology itself on its own is sitting in a little corner on a computer going, okay, how can I attack the Catholic Church? It's just that it can be used in this fashion. All right. So now let's look at it in a wider modern context, which is the context that concerns us. And in this modern context, what we've seen is a systematic attack on human nature and the family. And that's where both materialism and rationalism have been at play. And that starts in 1850 with divorce. In 1850 United States, divorce was allowed in some of the states. And then, actually in 1850, there were more divorces in the United States than in all of Europe. And in 1916, the US, because we like to be number one, led the world in divorces. And in 1970, we introduced no-fault divorce. That wreaked havoc on family life. Contraception, 1950. And abortion, 1967, started in Colorado. Here's one that you may not be thinking of, but to me it is extremely deleterious. And some of you may not like me when I say this. Unisex clothing, 1970. They called it, euphemistically, unisex clothing. But really what it was is getting women to wear men's clothing. And as a result, most of us are hypocrites. Because we have no problem allowing women to ingest pills that mess with their biology and wear men's clothing, but we are shocked and scandalized when some men want to wear women's clothing. We started this thing back then. We adopted it. And oh, by the way, when they started this unisex clothing, those fashion companies had to resort to, let's say, women who had they were making money with sex. Those are the women they used to put this clothes on display because no self-respecting woman would wear men's clothing. And the shock was extreme, and then we adopted it. And so that was the beginning of gender fluidity, contraception and unisex clothing. Homosexuality, 1980, started to mess with the idea that you can have actually whatever gender you want in couples. And euthanasia in 1980, also, in 10 states, started to mess with the idea that we can terminate life to end suffering. And transgenderism, which is the fruit of all of this, in 2020. So when you look at this whole spectrum that started back then, you could understand that the next evolution, the tsunami that is going to hit us, which we're not yet ready for, but it is coming, is humanoids. There is very active work being done now on producing synthetic skin and eventually the ability to produce robots that act and look like us. So I'm going to give you a little scenario now, how that's going to play out. We're going to come up with Apple is going to come up with this device called the Crystal. And what the Crystal does is it's a little device that you give to a baby when the baby's born, and then it's going to record everything the baby does. Every coo, every ah, every scream, every behavior, video, audio, sound, the whole 9 yards. Oh, by the way, it's very secure. It doesn't take anything to the cloud. It's all contained in a little thing. And many of you will think, oh, I'm never going to buy this. And I'm going to tell you, you're hypocrites. You have cell phones in your pockets. This thing is going to stay with the baby as the baby grows, all the way through the life of the baby. Young man, young woman, older man, older woman. And I'm only talking about public event. I'm not saying anything private. There's nothing indecent about what this thing is recording, all right? Once this person dies, what do I have in that crystal? I have a private language model specific to that individual. Let's call this individual Thaddeus. I suspect no one here is called Thaddeus. I should be safe. I have a complete language model, a private language model. GPT right now is a public language model, right? But I've created a private one for Thaddeus. And I want Thaddeus back. I'm going to build a robot that looks like Thaddeus when he was 20. I'm going to implant into this robot, GPT, I'm going to give him this language model. And now I'm going to have conversations with Thaddeus. And Thaddeus is going to act like Thaddeus did. He'll drive the car like Thaddeus drove the car. He'll speak like Thaddeus spoke. He'll be him. Let's take it one step further. I'm going to take the Gospels, every utterance of our Lord in the Gospels, and in all private revelations, I'm going to build a private language model for Jesus. And I'm going to build myself a robot that looks exactly like Jesus. I'm going to have my own Jesus at home. He'll be the one giving the homily. If I'm not in the Catholic Church, I have a question about the faith, I'll ask Jesus. Those humanoids are coming because they're driven by an economic incentive. There'll be workers, you'll employ them, you lay them off. I mean, in my companies right now, in most companies, bots are part of our Active Directory. They're like employees, they have the record. Because we need to give them access to systems. It is going to happen. That is the reality that we're trending towards. Do you really think that this society will be able to say no to someone who says, I want to marry Thaddeus? It is no longer a question of whether marriage is between two human beings. It's going to be a question of whether marriage is between humanoids and human beings. People talk about adopting dogs. Do you think there's going to be a problem in thinking about adopting a humanoid? No. We are going to be trending towards these realities that are going to happen. Because at the end of the day, what we want is that we're basically saying that we would rather create or make a creature in our own image than have a baby who's in an image of God. And that is a behavior that is seen in Scripture before. Specifically, the Tower of Babel. You go to the Tower of Babel, and Nimrod wants to build the Tower of Babel. And he wants it to go to the gates of heaven. Why? Because he knows about the flood. And he's basically saying to God, I don't care if you create another flood. My tower will reach the gates of heaven. An expression to say it is super high. So we'll survive by our own strength. We want to create a tower in our own image. Now, what I find really interesting is that the way God reacted to this, he didn't say, I'm going to rain fire on them, like in Sodom and Gomorrah. He didn't say, I'm going to destroy them. He didn't do any of this. He confused them. Well, I don't have to describe the world we live in right now. And then he went to Turkey and picked up this guy named Abram and told him, hey, get up, I'm going to take you to a land I'm going to give you, without telling him where the land is, where he's going to go. That was God's answer to this whole big hoopla about the Tower of Babel. Now, do you think something like that happened in our world? I'm going to come back to this question in a minute. Because now I want to tell you about a thing that is super important for Catholics to own and never let go of. One of the reasons why so many Catholics are anxious is because, unfortunately, they're being told half of the story. So now I'm going to give you the full one. And I'm just repeating it straight out of the scriptures. God governs the world through a covenant. How many among you understand the word covenant? Yeah. That's a problem. So I'm going to explain to you what a covenant is using one covenant you should all be familiar with, marriage. How many of you knew or know that marriage is a covenant? Okay. How many of you know that marriage is a sacrament? Excellent. How many of you call in your prayers explicitly for the power of that sacrament? Ah, good. Few of you. Nice. Here's what happens when two Catholic go into a church to get married. When they show up in church to get married, what are they? The bride and the groom. Objectively speaking, they're two sinners. Yeah? Good. I'm not going to ask for an amen. I'm not Protestant, so. They're two sinners, yeah? So why are they getting married in a church? They're getting married in a church because it's a covenant. So what's a covenant? A covenant is an agreement, not a contract, an agreement between a strong party and a weak party. The strong party is God. Actually, it is Jesus on the cross. He's the strong party. The weak party are the bride and the groom. A covenant works like so. The strong party says, here are my conditions. If you follow them, I'll bless you. And if you don't, and this is the bit that many Catholics may have never heard, I will curse you. Watch that silence. The idea that God curses is mind-blowing, but it's in the scriptures. Gospel of St. Matthew. Jesus went to that fig tree. He was hungry. He found nothing. What did he do? He cursed the tree. Jesus is against the environment. He cursed the tree. What happened to the tree? It died. There are many, many other places in the scriptures where cursed are applied. Woe to you, scribe and Pharisees. Woe to you sounds, oh, well, I have nothing to do with it. But actually, it's in the Hebrew, it's a Hebraism, because in the Hebrew language, you are not going to say the name of God. But it is Jesus who's pronouncing those woes. So God blesses and God curses. Once you understand that, everything equalizes. If you are faithful to my covenant, I will bless you. What does it mean to be faithful to the covenant? Does it mean you're never going to commit a sin? You're going to be perfect? Of course not. He knows we're sinners. It simply means we are willing to do what he says. Repent and convert. Which means we're always going to come back to him and say, Lord, I'm sorry. I messed up. Please forgive me. And he will forgive us. So the statement, God is merciful alone, is heresy. God is merciful to those who repent. That is truth. But God is not a fool. You have businesses and you have a new employee and he shows up in flip-flops 2 hours late and then sits at his desk and eats peanuts. First day. You're a nice guy, you're a nice gal, bring him in your office, you explain some things. Following day, shows up in flip-flops, sits at his desk, and eats peanuts. Let me ask this question. How long will you keep him employed? For a year, yes? So if you, who are made in the image of God, has that sense of justice built into you from God, why do you expect God to be mocked by a creature? Yeah, what is the beginning of wisdom? The fear of the Lord. So that's what a covenant is. Jesus Christ, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, is right now running this show. Which means everything that is happening right now is completely under his control. If you begin to understand that, then you shouldn't be anxious. Because at the end of the day, you and me need to fear only one person. Do not fear the one who can destroy the body, but fear the one who can destroy the soul. And the only one who can destroy the soul is the Lord Jesus Christ. No one else. That's the only one you can fear. That's the only one you have to fear. That's the only one that matters. Why are we anxious? What is anxiety? Anxiety is a mild form of atheism. That's what it is. Because we don't trust him enough to believe he's going to take care of us. So, that's a covenant. That's how God governs everything. How does this, then, artificial intelligence, fit into salvific plan? Well, I told you that for the Tower of Babel, he picked one guy, nobody knew about him, and then told him what to do. I think for our times, they did exactly the same thing. 1917. He sent his mother, who told us exactly what was going to happen. Russia will spread its errors. I don't want to belabor the point, but everything we're going through is straight out of a Marxist manual. Okay, fine. So this whole thing that we're going through is something the Queen of Heaven has already foreseen, including this thing I'm talking to you about, humanoids and the rest of it. And how does this whole game end? What did she tell us? In the end, my immaculate heart will triumph. So we know the end. That's how it's going to play. We have no idea how that's going to happen. But if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I will wager that the end is 300 years out. It's going to be a very slow process. Because what we're dealing with is this idea that we are now able to understand how this universe functions. We know more about the universe, about biology. Our knowledge has increased, but we're still foolish in many ways. We don't have wisdom and understanding, but we have a lot of knowledge. And that is going to have to play out. So AI is going to be the attack on reason and on the will. Up to this point, the affirmation that only rational beings have reason and will has withstood everything. The humanoid phenomenon is going to attack that. Because these things are going to be able to reason in ways that are better than us, manage data in ways that we cannot even begin to comprehend, and display intelligence that in many ways can be beyond ours. How are you going to be able to explain to this world that human beings have a soul? If they can produce a thing that does what we do without a soul. How? And our challenge, which is why I'm thinking it's going to take a while before we can provide the answer. The church will provide the answer, as the church always does. But it's going to take some time, because if you look at our current theological frameworks, one is, in my opinion, thoroughly messed up, because it's based on Kantian Hegelianism nonsense. A lot of modern theologians use that stuff. The other one, which is awesome and beautiful, is the Aristotelian Thomistic framework, but it's locked up in language that no one uses, and frankly, it's just not strong enough as a framework to deal with these issues. So the church is going to have to hustle up. We're going to have to rediscover these frameworks. We're going to have to modernize them. We're going to have to make them palatable to the modern world. We have to explain them. And when we do all that, everyone benefits. So every time we see something like that, I'm going to end with this idea, because I was told we need hope. So I do want to make sure we end with this note of hope. I'm going to give you two things. Number one, if you are devoted to Our Lady, then you need to know that Our Lady plays chess. And she plays a long game to win. We are all children in the Garden of Mary. Stop piling responsibilities on your shoulder and then start singing the praise of Mary. It is more important for us to glorify God and to love Him than to solve all the problems in the world. That's what we need to do. And the other aspect is that whenever you see something like that happening, whether it's wokeism or this transgenderism or this human, do what St. Paul says. Stand in awe. Do not reduce these actions to only the human component, because when you do that, you're not expressing your faith. Instead, turn to the Lord and say, with glee and excitement, Lord, what are you up to? What's coming down the pike? What marvelous thing are you going to do? And the last thing I'll tell you is something he told Saint Faustina. He appeared to her once and asked her, daughter, now listen, as Father Nabil, our pastor, used to say, listen good. Daughter, would you like me to create a universe just for you? And she said, no. I said, yes. No. She said, no. She said, Lord, what do I need in the universe when I have you? Which is obviously the right answer. But still, this is who Jesus Christ is. What are you worried about? You know, I wasn't going to tell you the story, but I think I want to finish with this. I've been saying this for a while. I should finish. The civil war in Lebanon started when I was 13 years old. In fact, it started before my eyes. I was on my balcony, and I saw it starting. I saw those guys shoot at this bus and pull dead bodies, 22 of them. We went through this war, and we lost everything. I mean everything. At one point, we were visiting friends, and our car was parked downstairs, and we were talking to them. We delayed 5 minutes, and a bomb exploded in front of my dad's car. It was totaled. We walked home. We lost everything. And I never stopped thinking about this. Because if when I was in Lebanon, somebody would have told me that one day I'd be speaking in English in front of a group of people, Americans, in San Diego, or I'm going to meet a Martian, I would have picked up the Martian. This is extraordinary. And your lives are just as extraordinary. So what are you afraid about? This is not the time to be afraid. This is the time to glorify God and wait for Him. This is His plan This is his salvation. This is his church. And you are his beloved. God bless you. Yes.
So what's the timeline on these humanoids to appear on the scene?
Timeline on the humanoids. From where we stand right now, the biggest. So the mechanics seems to be already mostly taken care of. If you haven't seen Boston Dynamics, check out Boston Dynamics, dancing robots. I think we're almost there. The hard part is going to be the skin and the expression, the facial expression. Most of the things they're building right now are creepy. But I suspect 50 years. 50 years, it's going to be incredible.
Including the crystals you're talking about.
Oh yeah, the crystals, I think, I'm calling them the crystals, but they're going to be coming sooner. The storage problem is the one that we need to solve. But interestingly enough, ChatGPT has been trained on essentially the equivalent 250,000 copies of the Bible, about 500 gigabytes. It's nothing today. So storage is taken care of. We know how to do videos. In the latest movie, Barbie, they made a song in the voice, I think, of Billy Crystal. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash. He didn't sing the song, but you hear the song, it's his voice. So we have the voice down pat, pretty much the intonation, the whole 9 yard. We have the expressions. We have the ability to make images and videos. It's getting it's going to get better soon. And the real challenge is the skin. Because if you notice, most animated movies tend not to include humans because we're so good at detecting skin. We can tell right away. So that's going to be the hard one.
Johnny Cash, it's not recording him when he was alive.
No.
They recreated his voice with the new song.
It is an artificial intelligence voice singing him. And there's actually, for lawyers, they're really interesting questions because they're asking if they should not be paying him royalties, or at least to his state.
Is it a new song or is it?
It's a new song.
But it's his voice.
But it's his voice. Well, it is his voice, yes. Yeah. So, lawyers going to be busy for a while. Definitely. Yes.
So how do you reconcile the artificial intelligence with the fact that, thought does not come from?
I'm sorry?
How do you reconcile AI with the fact that thought, the mind, does not come from the material world? And that's what indebted show, is that when people's brain is not working, they have, they see, so clearly and that's really what's going on in our world today, is that we've lost the sense of the supernatural world. So life doesn't come from DNA, it comes directly from God. It's part of the supernatural world. So how do you reconcile, because AI is not alive, right? Life comes from the supernatural world. You can't replicate it.
So,
They'll make it look like it.
but actually, it is going to be a real philosophical question that they will have to address. I will tell you that there are scientists who will argue that humanoids do have a soul. They go the other way. They spiritualize the humanoids. The point isn't what the actual ultimate truth is. We know the truth. That's a given, right? They don't have a soul. I'm 100% in agreement with you that the seat of reason and will is not the mind, it's the soul.
Right, well, because again, we understand with physics that how does electrons spinning around protons and neutrons cause thought? It doesn't work. So I mean, it's all trickery, which we know that's going to be the end times. It's going to be false miracles and all that. But again, that's really where our culture is right now.
Yeah.
That life comes from the material world.
And my point, I agree with you, that's exactly the point I'm making. The point is, today, when a pregnant woman goes to see a doctor, right? What is she given? Her and her husband. What did the doctor give them? A little brochure that shows what? The stages of the growth of the baby. It's a beautiful thing. What are we turning these Catholic men and women in? Materialistic people. Because there is, but why? The problem is with the church. What is our knowledge of the soul? All we say is, at the moment of conception, God creates the soul.
But that's why God gave us the Eucharistic miracles.
No, but I'm saying in terms of knowledge that we have to share with the young generation. How do we equip them? With what understanding do we give them for them to know that there is more to the soul than just this one statement? In order to do that, we've got to rev up our theological frameworks. And right now, it's going to take a while before we get there.
We're already working on it. That's what we have to do.
Yeah.
That is the battle.
That's it.
Battle over truth.
That's it.
Are we created and is our soul immaterial, which doesn't follow material world law?
Correct.
Body does, but our soul does not.
Correct. When we need to be able to bring that back. And that's, I think, what is going to force us to do. I'm hoping. Yeah. Yes.
So Naji, thank you so much. This was amazing. You need to record it, put it on YouTube, so we can spread it. You talked about Dr. Scott Frank also talking about the soul. God instills the soul at the moment of conception. Now I do, of course, as most deacons do and priests, volunteer marriage counseling. I'm not, I've studied it, but two questions I ask when a couple comes with marriage problems. Are you going to mass as a family? Are you using contraception? 100% of the time, the answer is no to both of these questions, which is not following God's command.
I'm sorry, they're not going to mass and they're not using contraception?
And they're using contraception.
So no, yes.
Yeah, no, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
I was going to jump for joy when you said two no's. So okay, at least I got one right.
not following the will of God
Yep.
is creating curses in marriage
Of course.
because of they're not honoring the Lord's day,
Yeah.
keep holding the Lord's day, and lust.
Yes.
So, how is that? How would you link that to the soul, and that the humanoid will never have a soul, and that contraception is really preventing the soul, or actually even killing in case of a birth-control pill abortifacient, or the sin of Onan and all of that stuff. How do you link all of these topics?
Yeah, I don't think humanoids have really much to do with contraception, other than the fact that they are part of the whole contraceptive mentality, right? The reason why homosexuality and all the transgender is being accepted by the majority of people is because there are other forms of contraceptives, right? So we share in the same sin. But so humanoids obviously are not going to be replicating themselves the way humans do. It's not going to happen. And to your point, there's no soul. It's pure materialistic construct. The challenge is going to be when kids look at a humanoid and see a humanoid doing what he's doing. Let's say a boy playing a game with a humanoid playing the game, and they're talking, right? Why would the boy think that this thing is different than him? And if that's the case, why should the boy believe there is a soul? When we have scant material to give that boy about the soul. We have nothing. So I don't put the blame on the world for building all of this stuff. I put it back right on us. That's our job. We have to be able to do better than what was done before. Before, they didn't need to. That was fine. There was no need. You see, this is what heresies do. They accentuate a certain need, and we have to respond to clarify, purify, and help people understand. And the only reason we want to do it, and that's why basically St. Thomas did everything he did, is precisely to help people go to Christ. That's the only reason why we want to do any of this. So the problem that we are going to run into is that we have no response. We have nothing to give them. Here's this humanoid. It's a girl, and she looks very pretty, and this boy is falling in love with it. How are you going to tell this boy that, no, you cannot do that because she's not human? Well, what's different? I'm biological, she's silicone, but that's it. How do you answer that? We've got to be able to come up with answers. And we will, I have no doubt. Look at what happened with the pro-life movement. When it started, the Catholics were no show. It was all on the Protestant side. And then slowly the Catholics got in and then started building the whole process, the whole framework. And now you have such a powerful framework, it overturned Roe versus Wade. So I have no doubt we'll get to it. It's going to take time because that's how we function. It takes time. Yeah.
It's this whole construct from the beginning, like contraception is sinful. Is this sinful in and of itself? Obviously, it can be done for simple things. You're going to make these sex robots and all that, which is obviously sinful. But what you're describing, playing chess or trying to have a carbon copy of a deceased loved one, I find that very problematic on many levels. I don't know if it's morally objectionable. I don't know what the church's position. Separate or apart from, you have to realize it doesn't have a soul.
Correct.
But once you realize that, is it sinful to make a carbon copy of your deceased child or spouse or whatever?
Great questions. Are these actions morally sinful? I am not going to answer them right now, and it's going to take time for the church to come with answers. Some things we would argue are morally sinful. For instance, making beautifully looking, sexy female robots is maybe not directly a sin, but it's a near occasion of sin for a lot of people. You shouldn't do that. You should have a robot fit to function. If your robot is supposed to carry the garbage, you should make the robot to look like Marilyn Monroe. Right? You just make the robot functional to carry garbage. But they're not going to do that. And we know it because there is this need, this rebellious need to assert that we are better than God. And yes, the church is going to have to wade into the middle of this and then figure out all those questions. The challenge for all of us is going to be, what framework do we use to answer those things? St. Thomas in his genius, right? You gotta love St. Thomas, he's amazing. I mean, I'm convinced St. Thomas was smarter than Einstein. I'm absolutely convinced of this. Yes, right? In his amazing genius, was able to take this Aristotelian framework and turn it into something that the Catholic Church could use fruitfully for hundreds of years. The problem is that today, that's not going to work. We need a new one. But we're going to have a little bit of a difficulty because Aristotelian folks will tell you, no, we're fine. I mean, domestic folks will tell you, no, we're good with this one, but they're happy. It's going to be a real challenge. So those are sorts of things the church has to go through. This is why I'm thinking between the progress on the scientific side and the progress on the theological side, it's going to take some time before all come together. But the point remains. Keep your eyes locked on God. Do not allow any of those things to trouble you. Sacrifice, pray, go to Mass, and keep your eyes on God. He is in control at every moment. Absolutely. He is. He's willing for this to happen, one way or the other. Allowing it or otherwise, I'm not going to go into any of this. This is all under his control. Jesus is not an absentee God. It's not like, oh, he started this soup, and then he went away to watch a baseball game, and he'll come back in 200 years and check and see where it is at. Not every hair on the head of your head's counted, right? Every. So, yeah, no, in the details, he knows everything. That's all we need to care for.